The Mini 5 Pro does have more to offer than what people realize, and a lot of these things are actually hard to discover by yourself or come by yourself without actually knowing about them. And that is what I'm going to try and help you guys out with in today's video, so you also get the most out of your drone as well. Alright, let's dive in. Alright, so first up we have an amazing feature called cruise control, and I'm going to show you guys why this is so good. But first we need to activate it because it isn't activated by default. And in order to do that we need to head into the menu, hit Control, scroll down and tap button customization. Now once inside we're going to swap out either the C1 or C2 button for this feature. In this case I'm choosing the C1, and under control we're going to set it to cruise control. So now that we fly forward we can simply tap the C1 and the drone will continue in that direction you choose. So whatever speed or direction you fly your drone, the drone will continue with the same speed and follow that same path. This is actually my favorite feature when it comes to DJI drones, as it opens up a wide amount of possibilities in terms of putting yourself in the shot and shooting yourself while at the same time making it seem like someone else is filming you while making it look natural. I've gotten so many cool shots with this feature, and it's probably the best tool for any solo creators out there. Another great cheat code for this feature is to simply fly forward, hit cruise control, and then in the edit you can just speed up your clip to the preferred speed of the clip you captured and color grade on top of that if you shot in D-Log M. That way you have your own high quality hyperlapse. Alright, so for tip number 2 we have button customization. Now we can make the Mini 5 Pro much more useful and a much easier drone to control by customizing a couple of buttons. So as we did with cruise control, we're going to head into the menu again, hit Control and scroll down to button customization. The first thing we're going to do is change the button for the 2x lossless zoom on the Mini 5 Pro. The 2x zoom is awesome, but it can be a bit unproductive to tap the screen all the time. So we're going to click the C2 button for this. Go over to camera, then scroll down and select switch cameras. So now that you press the C2 button on the remote, it will switch between the 2x zoom and back to the wide shot. But we're going to change a couple of more things, so we're going to head back into the button customization and change our gimbal roll because it is too complicated by default. So we're going to scroll down until we see the right dial and set this to gimbal roll instead of the zoom. This makes it much easier to use the gimbal roll while you're already focusing on the shot and the sticks by only rotating the right wheel for the roll. Okay, so the last thing I recommend changing is to hold C1 plus right dial and hold C2 plus right dial to adjust shutter speed and adjust ISO. That way you can easily set your settings without having to tap the screen. This saves a lot of time and it also makes it much easier to fly your drone, and it also lets you change the settings mid-flight. Alright, so next up we're going to change some settings in the Gain and Expo to get smoother shots. So we're going to head back into the menu, but this time we're going to head over to Control and select Gain and Expo tuning. Also make sure Cine mode is selected. Scroll down and set max angular velocity to 20 degrees a second, yaw smoothness to 12, brake sensitivity to 80, Gain and Expo to 0.1, gimbal control speed to 10 degrees a second, and tilt smoothness to 30. For the gimbal roll, we are going to set the max roll speed to 5 degrees a second and roll smoothness to 20. This will give you max control and smoothness to your shots when flying in Cine mode. If you want a more detailed explanation over these settings, you can check out my Mini 5 Pro settings guide where I explain all the movements and what they do. Alright, so next we're going to optimize our return to home settings. So we're going to click these 3 dots in the top right corner, and under safety here you will find the advanced return to home settings, and it shows you 2 options, optimal and preset. And you want to have the max altitude to be set to max as well, but if you have this set to preset, the drone will climb up to the max altitude before returning to home to avoid running into any large buildings, trees or obstacles. Now in most situations this is way too high and it costs too much unnecessary battery life, but if you have this set to optimal instead, the drone will act and behave to the environment instead, choosing the minimum altitude that's required. Okay, so we're going to change one more thing. So by default, the home point is set to where you take off with your drone. Now this is fine in most situations, but if you want to move around while flying, this can get complicated as the home point will stay fixed while you move away. In order to fix that, tap the return to home button, press update home point and then select dynamic home point. Now your drone automatically updates the home point to your controller's GPS position instead. Okay, so for this next one we have ND filters. Now when you bought your Mini 5 Pro, you probably got a package of ND filters from DJI, and these are completely fine. But if you want to take it a bit further, you can actually get something called split ND filters that has both ND and polarizers on them. So basically what polarizers does is removing reflections from water surfaces, etc. So I'm just gonna show you guys an example here where I'm rotating the ring on the outside of the split ND filter. And as you can tell, this removes the reflection on the surface of the water. And again here, it removes the reflection on this wall as well. Now there are multiple filters for your drone that does different things, but if there's one I'd recommend, it is these split ND filters from Freewell. I'll drop a link below if you want to check them out. Alright, so next up we have Gridlines. This will help you get better framing for your shots and will also make your shot look more advanced, more pleasing and professional. I saw a comment on this on my other video asking more explanation around this, so here it is. But first we need to activate it. So in the menu under camera you can scroll down until you see grid lines. Tap the third grid and you can also select the center grid to see exactly where the center is. Once activated, you'll see the grid lines appear on your controller, and what you basically want to do is put important part of your image along these lines or the intersections for a more balanced composition. Now using this technique is widely used in cinematography and it's called the rule of thirds. Now this is not necessarily always the case. If your intention is to have a subject dead center and that is your intention, then that is what you do. If you however want to place the subject or the object to one of the sides of the frame, you want to place them along these lines, which makes the whole image more pleasing. If the subject or object ends somewhere in between these lines and the center, it looks a bit off. Another great tip I can give you is to tilt the gimbal so that the horizon sits on top of the upper grid line for a more cinematic framing. Alright, so next we're going to get you the best dynamic range with the correct exposure. Now some of you have probably heard that you get more dynamic range when you're shooting in auto mode. This is most noticeable in high contrast scenes like sunrise or sunsets. But the big downside to this is that the exposure will change throughout the shot and ruin your footage. But there is a workaround for this, and that is to lock our exposure. You can do this by tapping the screen. This will bring up a yellow box, and then tap and hold that box to lock the exposure. But before you lock it, I do advise you to expose correctly with the proper ND filter to get the lowest possible ISO and stick to the 180-degree shutter rule, where your shutter speed is set to double your frame rates for a natural motion blur. Then switch to auto and lock it. That way you get both the correct settings and the full dynamic range from auto mode without the settings drifting away. Alright, so next up we have manual focus peaking. Now if you didn't know, the Mini 5 Pro has autofocus and it works really well for humans, as you can see with this yellow box around my head. But if you want something else in focus, or let's say you're doing a reveal shot, the focus can sometimes jump from the object closest to the camera to something in the distance, which can just ruin the shot. What we can do instead is click on the AF button here, which will switch the Mini 5 Pro into manual focus. Here we can drag up and down to focus between objects that are far away and really close. Now on the screen it can sometimes be hard to see what's actually in focus, especially when the sun is blasting our display. And in order to fix that, we need to head into the menu, go to camera, scroll down to peaking level. And we're going to set this to high for the best visibility. Now when we go back to the camera feed, you'll see red highlights appearing on the screen. These shows us what's in focus and what's not. So basically what we want here is for our subject or whatever we want to capture to be as red as possible. The more red it is, the more it is in focus. Alright, so next up we have something called advanced tracking. So most of you guys probably know about the great tracking feature that comes with your Mini 5 Pro. So by default you have the option to select the inner or the outer circle to regulate the distance to your liking. But what you might not know is that we can actually customize this tracking much more to our needs. And in order to do this, we need to head into the control menu and select focus track settings. Now once inside, we can see that there is a bunch of options here. So now we can choose how far or how close the inner or outer focus tracking is. We can also choose how high it will fly for the inner and outer circle. Same goes for vehicles. If we go into this section, we can also adjust pretty much the same thing. And again here for skiing and cycling, you can pretty much customize each mode to how you want your drone to behave based on your preference for each of these modes. Alright, so the next tip I'm going to give you is going to level up your video quality even further by changing a couple of things, because the Mini 5 Pro and most other DJI drones have a tendency to have a over-sharpened image, which gives you a digital look straight out of the box. So we're going to head back into the menu, go over to camera and scroll down to the style section. Here you will find sharpness and noise reduction, and you want to set both of these to -2. Now I just want to clarify that reducing sharpness doesn't decrease the details. You can have a detailed image without it being over sharpened, and cinematic footage is known for having a softer look to it in general. Now you can always add sharpness in your editing software later if you want, and the same goes with noise reduction. It's much better to remove the noise in your editing software if you have to. Alright guys, if you found this video helpful, I would appreciate it if you could smash that like and subscribe button before you head off. And as always, thank you so much for watching. Take care, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Fly safe.